today I wanted to talk about the topic of whether or not you can afford to keep a reptile, because it's something that's very important. It's something that comes up very often, but I feel like it's not talked about as often as it should be, and it's not something that's also considered as much as it should be. So I just want to go over it. Maybe you can learn something from it and hopefully help others by watching this video and learning something new and being able to share the knowledge with others. Also, a lot of you guys have asked me to do a video on my tattoos, and I didn't want to just make one video of just my tattoos because I feel like I need to do something of like some type of value for you guys. So I'm all about education, so I'm just going to add it at the end of this video. So if you're interested in seeing all of my tattoos, you can continue watching at the end and I'll go over all of them. If not, I'll just talk about whether or not you can afford to keep a reptile in the beginning. So when you go to a reptile store, or a regular pet store, or a reptile show, you'll notice that there are a lot of animals that are very, very cheap, such as like crested geckos and leopard geckos, sometimes bearded dragons, and the old one that was always super cheap were the iguanas. So when you see a really cheap reptile, you may look at it and think like, wow, that's super cheap, I can definitely buy that and take care of it, but that's not always the case. Again, this goes back into something that I always talk about, which is to do your research to make sure that you can provide every single thing for that reptile that you know it's going to need. So the iguana is a prime example of when this would happen, because iguanas were like the main lizard that were being sold in the beginning of the reptile industry. They were super common, super cheap. They were very small hatchlings, and people saw these animals, thought they could afford it, would take them home, and they did not realize how big these animals were going to get, and because of that, how much it was going to cost. You would have to build enclosures for these guys because there was nothing around for them. They can't just stay in a tank for their whole life, and they love to climb, so you need to build something. That takes a lot of time and a lot of money. People were able to spend the $20 just to buy the iguana in the first place, but then they couldn't put in all the time and effort it took to actually take care of that animal as it grew and got big. So because of this, a lot of people would just get rid of them or just set them free in the wild, and that's what happened a lot in Florida, and now they are just all over the place and they're an invasive species, and it's not good for them and it's not good for the environment. So things like that just should not happen, and that was just because of a lack of research. It was a new thing going on. Reptiles were all new and everyone wanted them. But again, the price does not mean that that initial price is how much the animal is going to be in order to keep that animal in captivity. Another example that I see all the time with this is people taking in turtles, because turtles are very, very small. So people see them, they're very, very cheap, super common. People sell them illegally all the time. They get little hatchlings and they just sell them for really cheap on the side of the street or something. And again, these animals are taken in because they're so cheap. Turtles are very difficult to take care of. Keeping a tank is a lot of work. Turtles take so much work because they need the heat, they need the UVB. A lot of people aren't even aware of that. They aren't aware that a turtle is going to grow no matter what size tank it's in. And they are going to require a much larger tank as time goes on, and they're really expensive and a lot of work, and people again just don't do their research, aren't aware. They get these animals because they're cheap and cute, and then they don't realize what's going to happen as they grow. So because of that, they end up being really expensive, and it's good to make sure that you know everything that is going to go into this animal as it grows, as it has a full life in captivity with you. You should never buy an animal thinking, I'll keep it as a baby, and then when it gets big, I'm just gonna get rid of it. Because a lot of people have that mentality, and then all of the animals are either released into the wild and die, or they become an invasive species, and it's overall just a really bad situation. So when it comes to a bearded dragon such as this one, they are small as babies, but you do need to take into consideration that they are going to need a very large tank when they grow. They're also going to need UVB and heat, and those things are not cheap. They can pretty much cost the same amount as it costs to just get a bearded dragon in the first place. So that's something to keep in mind, and it's not something that is just a one-time buy. When it comes to the heat and UVB, those things blow and you need to replace them. So you need to replace them at least every 6 months for the UVB because they get weak and they don't work as well. And that's pretty expensive. That's something you need to keep in mind. And if you can't afford to give the animal everything it needs, then obviously you shouldn't be getting that animal in the first place. Another thing that people don't really pay attention to is the fact that if you are getting an exotic animal such as a reptile, a snake, a lizard, or anything, is that these animals do have the potential to get sick or to get injured, and because of that you will need to take them to a vet, and an exotic vet can be kind of hard to find, and it's going to be way more expensive than just a typical veterinarian that takes care of dogs and cats. So if you can't afford to take your animal to the vet and do all of that in case it does get sick, then you shouldn't be getting it in the first place, because there's always that chance that something could happen, and you don't want to be in that situation and not be able to take care of your animal properly because you don't have the funds for it. I see people a lot of time on like Facebook or just on Instagram, and they're always trying to do the GoFundMe because they can't afford to take care of their animal. If you're in a situation like that, you really shouldn't be getting an animal in the first place, because you need to have the money to fully be able to give them every single thing that they need. If you can't provide for that animal, you shouldn't have it. Obviously things happen, people lose their jobs and things like that, but if something like that does happen, maybe you shouldn't be keeping that animal, because I've also seen that, and people have these animals and they don't know what to do with them anymore. They can't afford to feed them. They're asking for money for food. If you're in a situation like that, it's kind of better to just give that animal to somebody that you know can afford it and will take care of that animal, because it's not fair to the animal. I know that that can sound really sad, and no one really wants to get rid of their animal, especially if you love them. But if you're in a situation where you really can't provide for it, or you weren't aware about how much it was going to cost in the beginning, then you really should just look for a new home for that animal, because you really shouldn't take in animals like these. They have things that they need, and they can get very sick and they can die, and it happens all the time because people don't do their research and just aren't willing to provide for them the way that they need to be. So it's about basically putting these animals before yourself, before your feelings, and making sure that they're properly taken care of. So if you can afford to get a reptile, obviously for like their main price of just purchasing it off the bat, and you can also provide everything that it needs, and you're aware of everything that it needs, and you also have some saved, or you have steady income to where you know that if something does happen and you have to take your animal to the vet, you'll be able to afford it, then you can definitely afford to get a reptile, and that's something that you should consider. But you really need to go through this little checklist and make sure that you can provide all of these things for the animal and you're aware of everything that it needs before purchasing one. So again, I'm just going to go through that checklist. So obviously you're going to need the money to get that animal off the bat. That's going to be number one, just their regular price. And then number two is going to be, can you provide every single thing that that animal is going to need, including how big the animal is going to get, the size of the enclosure it's going to need, the heating, the UVB, the humidity. You need to make sure that you can afford to keep everything the way that it needs to be for this animal to flourish in captivity. And then number three is going to be, can you afford to take this animal to a vet if it has to happen, if this animal gets sick or injured and needs medical attention? If that checklist is complete and you can do all of those things and you know everything, then you're set to go and you should go get a reptile. If not, I think that you should wait, because it's not going to be worth it to end up in a situation where you have an animal and cannot provide for it and it gets sick or dies. So with all that said, I'll go into just talking about my tattoos. I know that was like super serious, but like it's something that comes up all the time. I see it all the time and it's horrible, and I really think that we can change something by just educating others about these topics. And when you see a friend or someone that wants a reptile and you know that they can't afford it, they don't know what goes into it, you can really educate them on it. You don't have to be negative and mean and be like, oh my God, you can't afford to get that. You just need to tell them everything that it really is going to require, because then they'll start to realize what it goes into it, and then they'll possibly change their mind and not end up getting that animal anyway. So I guess dude is just gonna sit here and chill. So I'm gonna get into my tattoos now. I really don't think I have that many. My arm is kind of covered, but I'll just go over that. So my very first tattoo was actually the one on my leg, and it is of a lizard, and it says bigger than the world. I got this for my grandpa because it was a little saying that we always had when I was really little. He would say, I love you bigger than the sky, and I would say, I love you bigger than the world. So I got that tattoo for him, and Then I kind of didn't think I was going to get any other tattoos after that. I kind of thought I was done. I never thought I'd be covered in tattoos ever. Where are you going? You're going to fall. But anyway, it happened. Now I have a lot of tattoos and they're as addicting as reptiles, so that's what happens. So the second tattoo I got is my dragonfly. I just love dragonflies. Everyone has always loved butterflies, and I always need to like things that are different, just similar to how I am with reptiles. I always want something different. So I was always just drawn to dragonflies. I just love them, so I wanted a tattoo and I got it. So the next tattoo after that is a film strip on my arm that says "Life imitates art." And this is something that I was like obsessed with. I still love photography and I'm really into film photography, so I just wanted something to represent that, and now I have it on me forever. Then after that, I just have this like little secretive tattoo on my neck that I even forget about because I can't see it ever, but it's just a Taurus sign, so I'll show you guys that. And then after that, I started going to Sue Houston in Chicago. She also lives in New York, so she travels back and forth, and she has done all of my nature tattoos that are on my arm. So I have, my newest one is a satanic leaf-tail gecko, and I got that after Nosferatu because my satanic leaf-tail gecko, he was the very first one I got. Then I got Autumn, the female, and they were breeding together. And then sadly Nosferatu passed away, and then I gave Autumn to my friend, and Autumn surprisingly laid eggs. So, and one of them hatched, so I'm gonna be getting that baby, and that is Nosferatu's baby, so I'm really excited for that. And I got a tattoo after him because I loved him so much. He was really special to me. I also have a turtle skeleton tattoo on my arm because I love turtles. I love their anatomy. They're so cool. I've always been fascinated by turtle skeletons because of their shell and how their spine goes in through the back of their shell. So very cool, just something I really wanted. I also love ferns. They're one of my favorite plants, so I have a fern tattoo. And then I have an owl butterfly tattoo because I love them. They're gorgeous, and it has a lot of different colors in it. They're usually brown, but I got a ton of different funky colors in mine, so I like it. And then I have my crocodile and flower tattoo, which is this right here. And this was actually designed by V. Steiner on Instagram. You guys should totally go check her out because she does a lot of reptile and amphibian art, and it is my favorite. She is amazing, just such amazing work. You have to check her out. And then last but not least is just my big tattoo over here, which is a snake that's coming out of flowers that's all coiled up, and I absolutely love this one. So that's all my tattoos. So hopefully I'll get more. They're addicting, as I said. Dude, your face is falling off. So that's pretty much it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for watching. Can you wave bye? Say bye.